家好，欢迎您来参加由台湾德嘎主办的禅修现场座谈会。Hello everyone, welcome to the meditation scene, a Dharma talk organized by Tergao Taiwan. 今天我们很荣幸的邀请到妙容法师跟我们分享如何透过书写开展觉知。Today, we are honored to have Tsunma Miaorong to share with us how to develop awareness through writing. 接下来就让我们合掌欢迎妙容法师带来今晚的分享。Now, please join our palms together and welcome Tsunma Miaorong to share with us tonight. Tsunma, please.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Xiaoru. Hello, everyone, to join this event tonight. I'm very honored and happy that Terga Taiwan has invited me for this meditation thing sharing event. Initially, actually, Mina Xiaoru has invited me to join the event. And actually, at the beginning, when we just met up, we're not sure what kind of topic that we should actually share with everyone. And then we have this conversation, and I began to contemplate, like this is the type of event that we can host. For example, the Dharma, the meditation, there are a lot of this kind of events. We can hear a lot of wonderful teachings. But actually, through my own meditation experience, probably I can share a lot of important tools that I'm using myself. And this tool actually is my own meditation technique, and also it's something that I will actually hand on, and something that is irreplaceable to myself, to my life. And this is a sharing that I would like to make today with everyone. I will share my PPT with everyone now. So anyone can hint me that if you can see my screen. So writing for awareness, this is the theme or the topic of tonight. So from the topic, actually, you may feel or you may find that even though I'm sharing the writing skill, but actually such a skill, the most beneficial function is actually to help us to be more aware, to have more mindfulness, or to have more acute awareness or mindfulness, whatever the words we are using. It can be a kind of like support to our meditation and our practice. I'm defining it as also a tool for my practice. I wonder if you have the same feeling. Whatever we do, actually, if we're good at using those tools and know how to use the tools, it can make our work or anything that we are working on can be more efficient and effective. So here is what I find. In any learning or in Buddha teaching or Buddha Dharma learning and all our meditation, sometimes we are lacking of using some proper tools or some more techniques of how to use those tools. then this might lead us the lacking of effective practice. It makes us kind of like having a blunt kind of result, and that is because we are not good at using some tools, and we don't know how to utilize some tools or situations. So myself actually have such kind of feelings, and I actually took some time to figure out what can help me or what can support me more. And this writing is one of the methods that I have found. And after a few years of persistence, I found out that writing is actually a very good tool. And I share this with many people around me, especially since last year. And I wish that everyone actually can take up their pen to begin to notes. And of course, right now, when I say pick up the pen, it might not be sort of like a real pen, but it can be using computers or iPad to write down. And it's actually more efficient for us to utilize those so-called pen, and probably not the traditional pen and paper anymore. And now the writing down can be much more powerful, much more efficient to utilizing this electronical devices. So actually tonight it's more of I can define it as the tools of along our practice path. How can we use those tools? And I'll like to share the origin of my writing and why I started to write. Actually, in 2019, I have a mental preparation, and I'm thinking in 2022, for example, I would like to have a long-term retreat. And before that, when I do the preparation of the retreat, I had the chance that I have seen a documentary movie. It's about a vegetarian documentary movie. And this documentary movie, the way that it has been expressed, it's to study those players, especially those players who are vegetarian. And those athletes, they are actually not normal athletes. They are like Olympic athletes. And many of them are medal award-winning athletes, and some of them are even record like award winners. So this documentary movie is about them. And the part of the movie that I've seen is during their practice. And even though it looks like they are just doing some sports games, they have to do the recordings of their trainings. And part of their training is like writing down. For example, they have write down their status of today and the standard, especially their own status, body situations and dietary situation, and what have you eaten, etc. So all these athletes, the reason why they are doing the recording is to be more aware of their own status. And this recording, why they are doing this, once you have the recording, and then you can have a better understanding. Inner or outer situation, you have a better recognition of your own situation. And with this observation and all this recognition, you can adjust or improve, or how to have a breakthrough of your own performances. And within these recordings, I found out that these athletes, they are using the recording and writing actually recording is one of the writing method to actually improve their own practices and to get better understanding of themselves. And then after watching this movie, I was thinking, actually, this is really like a training of ourselves. It's almost like our practice, the practice of training ourselves, even though we're not training our muscles. It's a training, actually, the muscles of our mind. Then I made decision that I should be like consider myself as an athlete. So almost like using the Olympic athletes kind of a standard to rule myself, especially when I before the preparation of my retreat, I would like to take the strategy of the athletes. And then I decided I'll write down the diary of retreat. Of course, there are many other reasons. And also, this retreat lasted from 4 a.m. in the morning until 8 p.m. in the evening. And there's a lot of repetitions, etc. And then I also think that it's another element of fun for me to take notes. And I wouldn't like kind of like repetition will not make myself like numb. And such a precious kind of like retreat, I would like to also reserve a trace of my practice. So all of these are the reasons that in 2020, January 18th, I started the writing in the retreat. And then later on, when I keep writing, I found out that this is a fantastic tool. Of course, later on, I'll mention this more, that during the retreat, actually, I formed the habit of writing. Even though after my retreat, the retreat diary has been finished, but I started another diary. It's to take notes of my daily life. And this is a region of my writing. I'd like to share this with everyone so that I wish that everyone can find a beginning of your writing or intention or motivation of your writing. And after I keep writing, and day by day, I found out that my writing, actually, I mark it down. For example, the dates, and I give a number, a code of this writing. For example, the first day is day 1. And then one day I found out I've already reached the 200 or 300 or even 500 days. And then now I found out that I'm already at the 700 days point. And after this writing, I found out I actually have gained a lot of insights. And also, since this invitation, I really thought about, I really like summarized my learnings or my insights about writing. And here is my learning. Actually, I found out that actually writing is very important, essential tool that that I have summarized within these points. First of all, writing has helped me actually that to do this learning, contemplate, and meditate. Even though from the listening of the teaching, for example, when we are doing the teaching, when we're doing the listening, especially the online teaching, there are plenty of Dharma teachings everywhere. But for our contemplation, this skill, this training is not enough. The training of contemplation is not enough. Actually, more of these teachings are focused on listening, and then contemplation and meditation are lacking of. For example, the practice also like meditation or practice of some Dharma teachings, etc., looks like it's doing, but actually the contemplation is lacking. And the writing actually, the process of writing actually, especially when we writing down the things, it's a wonderful kind of a summary of our thoughts. Whatever you have heard, if you know how to write them down, and then actually this is lacking of the contemplation has been, the gap of this contemplation has been filled. And through the writing, as I just mentioned, since we are doing a lot of summarize, and we are doing some feedback, then we can actually see through some of our blind spots and some issues of ourselves. And then we are becoming a teacher of ourselves. We can do adjustment by ourselves, probably some methods, some like style of practice. All of these, we can actually do a self-correction or adjustments. Actually, writing can actually deepen our practice. And it can put, actually it can give a soul to our practice. It can actually add observation, a self-observation and self-awareness. Another learning is that it is a medium that we can actually interact with information. For example, we have heard a lot. Every day we hear some good comments, good conversations. I don't know if everyone is thinking of this, but for me, I feel like everything was so rich, but then I don't remember anything. And I forgot about yesterday's happening, and I forgot about the morning happening in the evening. Even though I made some efforts, but then it's really like so vast. Everything was not very focused. For example, if I ask you, what have you eaten last night? Is a little bit like the joy of living level 3 kind of question that Rinpoche will ask us. But if you really think about it, can you remember what you have eaten last night? And it's a very vague kind of memory we have. So in our life, if we have a lot of gains, a lot of learnings every day, and we have to memorize some of this by writing. So writing is a method and can put a direction to memorize some of the very crucial informations, and can help us to memorize or interpreted some of the information that we gained. So this is another benefits of writing. And writing is a more subtle expression. Sometimes we don't use our brain so much when we like talk. So talking is easier, but writing actually is much more subtle, and we have to use our brain and sometimes use some more strength because it's a more subtle expression. And this kind of more subtle expression, it brings more subtle observation and mindfulness. And our awareness, our observations, etc., can be visualized. For example, after our conversational talk, it just fly away without any trace. But here we can see it. And then we can know our observations, our learnings, how it looks like. Of course, I also say that it is writing can free up the space and it can actually really make our mind less crowded, can let our mind and brain have a way out. And the last, actually, writing is a way that can train our mind. And the all Dharma teaching and all Dharma practice is a practice and training of our mind. And the writing as a technique or a tool can train our mind. It's also a good tool that can train our mind. For example, we can set an objective and we can establish more perspectives. And we can adjust our recognition perspective or a method of our recognition. Actually, meditation can also adjust this perspective, and other listening and contemplation can also adjust our angles or perspectives. But writing is also another tool that can help us, that can actually improve our effectiveness of our learning. So all this of my gain or my learnings, then I call it, this is a functional writing. I call this a name. I name it as a functional writing. I'm not sure that whether this concept exists or not, but I think writing is not just a simple concept, but is more of a functional writing. And I'll also share the meaning of this name. In my Facebook, I'm actually doing some sharing of the writing, and some students were asking me, what does this mean? And some students are thinking that it is like writing down some sutras, etc. Some other people might be thinking that writing down your feelings, and some other people might be thinking that all those kind of things are like writings in various definitions. But here, what I want to share with everyone it's not like a kind of like writing that you need to have a great start and wonderful like ending, not like something more rational, logical. You don't need to have a great like a writing style, etc. The main point of this writing is a tool that actually we utilize this tool to help us, to support us through the listening, contemplation, and also contemplation and awareness. So here, the writing, you don't have to care about like a beautiful article. No need to have such a pressure, and no need to have such kind of like expectations. And we don't have to show off our writings to others or to complain about our situations. So, of course, all of those that I just mentioned, they are type of writing. It's a vast definition of writing. But here, what I mean, I would like to clarify the definition of this sharing is about functional writing. And this functional writing, I like to define it much more. So actually, you have to define your current need to write down, like to write, and you can adjust your purpose of writing anytime. So it's actually a support of our Dharma practice. And this kind of functional writing, the key point is we need to set a goal and direction of our writing. And we also have to know that as time goes by, we can adjust the purpose and the direction of our writing according to our current needs. Actually, writing itself is a practice. It's almost like our meditation. And we are all like Dharma friends. We have learned the joy of living, and some of you have done path of liberation, etc. And you have done a lot of different practices. And then through our experiences, we have learned that we need to set a goal. And we have to do this like with intent. When we are doing this, it's a training, it's a practice. And we need to actually adjust our practice. For example, take a break or change another method, etc. So here is an experiment that I did. And I think there are some criteria that need to be set. There should be a direction. It's not just like a scramble around. You need to have a clear goal. And you have to do it with intention. And you take this writing as a practice, as a training of yourself. And also you have to know that you can adjust your direction. For example, as a goal, how to do. Here is kind of like objects that you can set. These are all the directions that I experimented myself. For example, you can say that here is, I would like to notify what happened in my life every day. For example, the daily happenings, we mark down some kind of anecdotes, almost like what I've eaten yesterday and what happened the day before yesterday. So we don't have any empty chapter. So during my retreat, for example, I would like to write down every day my practice, whether it's good or not kind of experience, I would like to write them down. And during my daily life, for example, I can meet someone, go somewhere, and whatever happens, and I would like to write them down. It's kind of a recording of my own life. And for example, today, what I will be writing, for example, I visited a temple today in Nepal. I would like to write them down. For example, conversation with the master of the temple and my observation or my key learnings of today, for example. And of course, these directions, you can actually adjust them every day. Sometimes maybe you don't know what happens, or some days that things happened and you didn't like notify. You can just write down one sentence, not necessarily to be a long kind of paragraph. And sometimes nothing happens, but we actually obtained some information. And then you can set up your goal as some useful information that you have obtained, or summarize those informations. Through this kind of summarize of the information, you can reinforce the memory. And it can also clarify some of the vague concept of ourselves. Sometimes some concepts are very vague, and you can write down like your thoughts. For example, a while ago, English teacher of mine has shown me a TED talk. It's talking about the linguistic, what impact linguistic can construct or influence our recognition or cognition. And there are a lot of informations there, and I've learned a lot. And then I have actually taken some notes of my learnings of this TED talk. So this is an interaction with the information. Maybe it's just this thought, this article, or this movie, or this book. And just to write a few lines, and it could be really beneficial. This is a second direction. Another direction or a goal can be to clarify some vague ideas. For example, you can say that I would like to write down some of my thoughts. Sometimes for example, I have a wonder someday, why things are happening this way. And I was confused about that, and I write down my confusion. I can write down all this kind of thoughts. Maybe after a while, maybe after a few days, when I reread those wonders, I can actually clarify if I've already found the questions or it's still adults. And furthermore, actually writing can free some spaces of our inner mind and to lower down the pressure of our memory. Actually, the capacity of our brain right now are overloaded. Majority of people are like that. But actually, writing can let go of some not very necessary informations. It's almost like downloading some of the unnecessary informations from your brain onto the paper. So you can try this way. And then the pressure of my brain and the pressure of my memory has been lowered down. Otherwise, I'll always have a pressure like, I should remember this, I shouldn't forget that, and I shouldn't forget about this important thing. And more, this kind of reminders in our brain, it can become a pressure. And I have this small technique. I would like to write down my plans. And then I'll go back and have a look of my notes to-do list of mine. And then I wouldn't put more pressure on my mind. And then another thing is during the meditation, I wonder if you have this if you have this experience. Due to our meditation, because our mind are calm, and then you memorize a lot of important things. And then you have this thought, oh, I should have done that, and I haven't. Or you suddenly thought about a good idea. Or you suddenly thought about, oh, I should actually call this person, etc. So all these ideas popping up, you need to recognize, you need to remember them and shouldn't forget about them. A lot of things that you should have done, but you haven't. And this situation actually can put also the pressure on my meditation. I wonder if you have the same experience. And I suddenly thought about some important things that I forgot to do. But now I'm doing meditation. Should I actually, I should, my experience that I write them down. And then this idea is gone. And after the meditation, I will be like this. I thought about something during the meditation, but now I forgot. And looks like it's quite important, but I forgot it again. And once or twice happened like this. And next meditation, I immediately thought of some other things. I began to have some pressure. And I will think that if I don't write them down, and actually I will forget about them after the meditation, and then it creates a little bit of stress for me. And then actually during the meditation, I will always prepare a small empty notes beside my hand. If I have remembered some important things, for example, I will immediately write them down. And this writing is not, of course, writing like very carefully. I might just write a few keywords so that like a reminder that I'll remember what I've thought about after the meditation and let them go. And I continue the practice, meditation practice. Then I know that during this 1 hour of meditation practice, my meditation will not be disturbed by my memory, and I come back to meditation without being distracted. So here is also an application of a writing during the meditation. You can also set a direction of writing as a healing process. For example, I write a lot, and during the writing, since I using different directions or set different goals, then there's different functions of the writing. For example, once I have an argue with my Dharma friend, some little bit like not very pleasant argues, and I don't feel really happy. I've always been thinking, why it has been like that, and it's very hard to communicate. But then it's hard to keep communicating with this Dharma friend. And then there's a tension there and subconscious in my mind. And of course, you can use a lot of kind of technique of the meditation practice. But I find out that writing and meditation technique together, they are very powerful. So, and I write down like why we started quarreling, and what other conversations or the fights that we have been like kind of arguing, or where are the points that made me feel uncomfortable or feel hurt. All these descriptions sounds like a lot, but it can be just like as simple as a few sentences. Just a few sentences will cover all the things up. And that happened last year. And during this experience, I found out that my emotion and the unpleasant emotion has been eliminated almost half just after the writing. So actually everyone can try those kind of blockage within my mind. It's like immediately clarified after the writing. So I found out why we actually are arguing and what are the points that made us like unpleasant. And through the writing, it can actually manifest to you that why you felt hurt or felt unpleasant. Actually, everyone were having a kind of like a good intention, but we ended up fighting. And then the writing actually clarified all these things, and it makes you actually stand on a very objective kind of like a standpoint. You are almost like the third party that you can see clearly the situation. And then you can see that, oh, actually, I made a mistake. Or we can find a way that to solve or resolve these conflicts. So here is application and the benefits I found in writing. And as we all know that writing need to use more brain, it can actually polish our logical thinking, because the words actually, the writing actually can take a little bit more time. So you have more time to contemplate. And the process actually can improve our mindfulness, and our contemplation can polish our recognition. It can improve our thinking and contemplation. These are the kind of like my observations and my learnings. Through writing, you can see your own thoughts. You can see your own perspective, and your these are the things that you can actually can be seen. It concretely manifested in front of your eyes. So sometimes when I don't have a lot of time and I don't want to take notes of many things, but I still request myself to write down at least one sentence per day. So for example, I set an objective that every day I have to write down one sentence at least of this full day. What is the summary of today? And then I'll find out that, oh, actually, this is my thinking of today. And through this practice, it can help us to improve our observation and mindfulness. And really, like the crucial point of this writing is to write down our internal mind. This is an echo of someone who said copying or writing like It's not this kind of writing. It is a natural process of expression. You don't have to have attempt that or expectations of trying to compare who is the best writer, etc. So your objective, your goal has been set as such that is not like copying something or like showing off to other people. It's actually a flow of your own mind here. So this is the key. And here are various categories of writing. And this categories of writing is also aligned with the objectives. For example, keep a diary and to write down all the happenings. For example, today I made too much efforts and I feel quite tired. For example, this is a sentence that we can use. And then I know that since tomorrow I should make some adjustment. And if I don't write down, maybe for a few days, I'm in a very vague understanding, and I wouldn't make a very quick adjustment. And it can also be for example, you are watching a video, you are reading a book, and you can actually summarize a few chapters, your learnings, or the summary of everything that you have read or watched. Here can be a trace of your own daily practice or daily progress. It can be also expression. For example, recording down when you actually make an expression of your own situation. Then after a month, after a week, or after a year, and you have some interesting findings, you can see the changes of your and you can write down that what you are thinking of and what you come.
For instance, every day, I will be writing about what I can appreciate about myself. And in that way, I can train my mind. I can tell my mind to see what it is that it should be seeing. So overall, over the course of over 700 days, every day, these are the types of writing that I have done. And also all of the goals that I have shared with you earlier on. Of course, I've done all of this according to my situation at that time. For instance, sometimes you might be very busy, and when you're busy, you might feel really tired or not have the time to do so. Then all you need to do is to summarize. Just summarize a day, and that is sufficient. Just like for me, for instance, when I'm traveling, there are lots of changes. And so over this period of time when I'm traveling, my daily writing is merely just a couple of words to summarize the day. And previously, when I spent a long time in Taiwan, my life was more stable. Then I was able to write more. So other than summarizing my day, I'd also note down the things that happened, or maybe some of my thoughts and observations. So it really depends on your situation. When you're busy, you can just write a few words. And if you have the time, you can also adjust your practice. But most importantly, we've got to persist with the writing. We've got to continue with the practice. I'd like to share how, like, I often use the words writing to describe this practice. And previously people asked me, so when you say writing, is it just journaling? Is it to release your moods and emotions, or is it just copying? So I find that it's really hard to define it or to fix it in a particular definition. It covers a broad range. That is, whatever the situation is, whatever it is that is in your mind, then you can set your goal, the direction, and the type of writing that you choose for yourself. So I hope that at this point, you would be able to see what it is that I have done for myself in the writing. So now let's take a look at how we can go about doing so. I would suggest that perhaps for those of you who already have this habit, then there are also those who don't have this habit. Maybe we may write something, but it isn't really a part of our daily lives, or it is not our habit. So when we want to begin with this practice, don't try to do too much at the start. It's just like in meditation. So you want to keep it short, and you don't want to make it too detailed. For instance, if you decide to record something, you don't have to write all of the details down, like who's there, what happened, everything, 100 words, 1,000 words. You don't need to do that, because if you do that, then after 2 days, you'll give up. So the technique with which you use when you're doing this is to tell yourself to keep it short and to avoid too many details. That is, it is concise and it is short. And I'd also suggest that you can use a kind of like a structure. So sometimes when we have to write a lot, we might get lost in words. So what I do is, maybe today, what happened today? I went to I went to this place, this Buddha, this stupa. And then 2, today, I got invited to do some sharing. So this is a very short and concise way of recording. So for instance, 1, I visited this place, and then below you can have a few lines to describe your thoughts about it, your observations. And then under 2, after my sharing today, maybe when I go back, I can write down what it is that I have learned or my experience. So what are my thoughts about different things that happened? So you can go by the numbers. And when you're writing, you don't have to worry so much about the language you use. So we just want to make this task easy. We don't want to set too many standards. So today, for instance, you may have written something like this, and then you may have some kind of a heading for it. For instance, you might say that for today, the heading for today's writing is a fruitful day. Or it could be a busy day. So whatever it is just to give some kind of a heading for what you've written for the day. And it can be a couple of words to sum up what you've written. I find that really useful. So when it comes to writing, if you want to really try this as a practice, you've got to be prepared to do so every day and over a long time. So it is a long-term challenge. And that is why we need to make it simple. It is something that you're able to do every day. And maybe after 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, after you're habituated to it. So just like at the start, a couple of minutes before this event, I'm right in front of the computer, and in 2 minutes, I'm able to write down what it is, my reflection and my thoughts about my visit to the stupa today. So what I wrote is that today I went there and I saw the Buddha statue, a Buddha, and I saw that there is suffering, and yet there is no fear in terms of wanting to reach out to help. And that is what I've learned today. That is my observation today. That is what I saw. So you don't have to think too much. You don't have to write too much. You just think about it and write it out. And say in a year later or 2 years later, and I read this, I'd be able to remember what I learned today, the inspiration from today. So if you have the time, if you have the leisure, if you're able to write a little bit more, some more details, more emotions, of course you can do so. But my suggestion is, well, it's the same like as in our daily lives. There are times when you want to go for a big feast, but then most of the time you will take really simple meals. So similarly, you can just write simply every day, like 1, 2, 3, like that simply. And when you make it simple, then it's easier for you to maintain this practice, to continue with this practice. So then my method is that, just like when I talk about eating, for instance, there are certain things that we eat most of the time. So for me, this is what I usually do. First is what happened today. I'll just very simply describe what happened for the day. Maybe it's something that is interesting, amusing, or maybe it's something that's exhausting, just anything. And you can write more or less. It's really up to you. So when I talk about the functional writing, you can have a one direction, one goal, or you can have multiple goals, multiple directions. All of this is fine. And sometimes, in fact, you might realize that, oh, today, it was a day that I did not do anything. So there isn't much for me to write about. What am I going to do? So some people might ask me that. But in actual fact, I've had such an experience just previously, I think a month ago, I just got my 3rd vaccination. And then that made me experience the kind of suffering that I've never suffered before. The first 2 vaccinations was not so bad, but the 3rd one was really bad. So for the entire day, I wasn't able to do anything. I just wanted to lie there, and I wanted to get up, but I couldn't. And so I struggled for the whole day. And in spite of that, I still learned something. And that is, I realized that even though I didn't really do anything, that I was in discomfort the whole day, what I realized is that our physical health is extremely important. When you're sick, you're not able to do anything. And so that was what I wrote that day. So I wrote down, receive vaccination, discomfort, I suffered, I recognized the importance of our physical health and how impermanent life is. And that was my reflection for the day. So that's my sharing. So the main point is that when you want to use writing as a tool, when you want to start writing, I realized that it is really a technique for our awareness because you are writing, because you've given yourself a homework or a practice to write, then you will realize that all the things that happen in your life or even in your practice, it becomes clearer to you. And you observe it more deeply, more closely. That is what I have found out through the writing practice, a benefit that I got from this practice. Then another thing I'd like to share with everyone here would be the tools that we can use for writing. So I've said earlier that traditionally it is just pen and paper, these two. But in the past, I felt that there's some problem with using, pen and paper. Of course, I love using, pen and paper to write. But the problem is you're afraid that other people might read it. For instance, children might have written their journals, and then maybe their classmates or their parents might have read it, and then they would have given up on journaling, or they might even be hurt or traumatized by it because their secrets have been discovered. So there's that kind of pressure. But now, in this day and age, because we have so many electronic tools, and there's the code, that you can enter to keep your writing safe, to keep your writing private. Therefore, there is more privacy right now when we use electronic means. So these are the tools, the electronic tools that the applications that I find pretty useful. I mainly use Evernote and Notion, these two. Yeah, so I use these two, Evernote and Notion. So when it comes to writing, sometimes I feel that I often recommend my friends to take up this practice and ask them to just write, just try to do it. I've promoted this to a lot of my friends, but I also realized that the first response from my friends is that, what? I don't like to write. You can ask me to do anything, but I just don't ask me to write. Then I think about it and I wonder why. Then I realized that this could be related to what we talked about earlier on, because writing is a more subtle way of expression. And hence, you need to think more, you need to use your brain more, especially when you're not used to it. When you're not used to it, it becomes harder, it becomes more tiring, and it becomes slower. And you've got to think more, and you're not willing to go put in that effort. However, I also think that for people nowadays because we're mostly quite well educated and are able to write. We have that ability. It's not like in the past whereby people are able to speak, but they may not be able to read or write. But for us, most of us are able to read and write. So whether you can do it well or not is another matter. But this is a practice that we can take up since we already have the ability. And it's just a matter of whether we want to use this or not. Then, of course, the more you use it, the better you're at it. So I'd really encourage you to use your ability to write since you already are able to do so. And you have this tool. So use this tool to help yourself to see clearer and to understand or be more aware of our lives. And over here, I hope that you can start immediately, of course. So I hope that you can start immediately and write, but I don't want you to leave yet. So in Zoom, let's try it out. Maybe while you're seated here, after you've heard all of my sharing for almost an hour or so, I don't know for how long. I've been talking for so long. So I'd really like to see over this hour or so, what are some of your thoughts? What is it that you feel you've learned? Try to very simply, instinctually, you don't have to worry about writing well. Just write down what it is that you have learned, what it is that might have inspired you, or something that stood out to you. Try to use in your own way to write it down simply. Just a couple of words, it could be just a line. I hope that you'd be able to write it directly in the chat so that you can share it with everybody else here. So let's try some of this writing practice. I can already see many of you have shared. Many said that they are interested in writing, and today they'll start writing. They want to start now. And they want to develop their ability to focus. All we need to do is write. We've got to start. We've got to practice so that train our mind so it can see what it needs to see. Thank you all for your sharing. There are still many who haven't shared, so let's wait a little bit. Just try your best to write a little. So through writing is our practice to take note of our feelings. Simple and consistent. Actually, to keep it simple and to persist, it is similar to how we approach meditation. And also when we start anything, we've got to start simply, and then we'll be able to persist with the practice. For many things, it's like this. And I hope that through my sharing tonight, I hope you can start and pick up this tool that you already know, you already have, and use it to benefit yourself. But I've got to emphasize that you have got to set some kind of a goal. You've got to adjust the direction and goal of your writing. So you shouldn't be writing without a goal. It shouldn't be merely like, writing about your complaints. And it shouldn't be a tool to attack people. For instance, online, there are many people who use their comments like a sword, that the words are used to make people feel discomfort or even to hurt them. So over here, we want to make writing as our practice, as a tool to deepen our practice. So I hope everyone remembers this. And over here in the action of my writing, I've also mentioned that how can we ensure that we're able to persist? So other than making sure that it is simple and easy to do, you can also have some kind of a feedback for yourself, because we all need feedback. Why is it that we like to play computer games? It's because the moment you accomplish something, there'll be all kinds of coins dropping down, and then you get prizes and flowers, and you feel a kind of immediate feedback. And so you feel motivated to continue with playing the game. Hence, we can use such a method to set up some kind of feedback for ourselves. For instance, in social media, in Taiwan, we use Facebook, Twitter, some of these. In China, they use 微信, Weibo. So, of course, your writing is your practice, is your records, no matter what your goals are. But the main point is, sometimes perhaps there are certain parts are pretty good, especially some of your observations, some of your experience, or even a couple of words that you read and you go, wow, like for instance, sometimes I'd look back and I'd read what I've written and I realize, oh, you might experience, oh, my thinking at that time, perhaps it's kind of shallow. But there are also times whereby you read what you've written and you go, wow, I was pretty profound. So you can also try to share the parts that you feel can be shared on your Facebook, Weibo, the different social media that you use. So only the parts that you feel you can share. And then after you have posted it on your social media, some of your friends might click like. And through this way, then it can encourage you to continue with the practice, because it's kind of like a feedback. Of course, I'm not trying to make you feel any pressure like, oh, I've got to share on Facebook. And then after that, people may like it, or they may write all kinds of different comments. And then I feel more stressed. So you just evaluate it for yourselves. Yeah, whether or not you want to share it or what you want to share. Or you can just share it with a very small group of your friends. So if you're able to get some kind of a feedback in this way that can enable you to continue with this practice over a long term, that can be good. So earlier on, somebody asked a question. Somebody asked, is writing a kind of like journaling, like writing a diary? So I'd like to repeat here that writing can be journaling, that journaling is also a kind of writing. Let's take a look at the earlier slide. So these are the different types of writing. It can be like kind of journaling, it can be feedback, etc. So journaling is a kind of writing, but as to what you write in your journal, what kind of way you write it, what kind of goal you've set, the content, the perspective, all of these are things that you can decide for yourself. So for me, writing covers a broader area rather than merely journaling. Because if it's just journaling, just writing in a diary, then it's very narrow. Because most of us would have a kind of idea about, oh, journaling or writing in a diary, it is a particular way. It is quite narrow. So I hope that our understanding of writing is richer, is broader. It is something that you can change. Overall, I'd say that writing, I realized that through writing, I'm clearer about my life. And that clarity to me is extremely important. So in our practice of the Buddha Dharma, in our meditation, at some point, we are really developing our self-awareness. And also through writing, I realized that it can really help me have better self-awareness. Of course, writing, just like what I mentioned earlier, you're doing it consciously, and you continue to adjust and you continue to do it. You need techniques, but after some time, would be able to better see our mind and our life. We will have a deeper and clearer understanding of our life and our practice. You'll also realize that gradually, if you're able to use your ability to write, your ability to use this tool, you can use it in our learning, in our lives, in our Buddha Dharma practice. You can use it in every aspect of your life. The most important thing is through writing, you'd find out that every day, from the very first day that you start writing, you'll realize that every day you have some kind of learning. Even if it's in the subtlest and the smallest bit, you'll be able to see and realize and be inspired by it. You'll be able to see that there are many, many things in your life that you've experienced and you can learn from. And at the same time, you would be more conscious, more aware of what's happening in your life. That is to be conscious of what's happening and awareness, I find that they are synonymous. Through writing, one last thing that I want to point out is that because of writing, you're able to see yourself more quickly, and you can more quickly adjust the way you do things, how you live life. You can more swiftly make changes because of the practice of writing, because you can see it faster, therefore you can make changes faster. So these are the benefits that I've gotten through the practice of writing, and I have shared it with you so that I hope that all of you can take action and take up this practice. I believe that you will benefit from this. And I have a story to share with you because we're going to go to break pretty soon, isn't it? So let's take a break first. We'll take a break for 5 minutes. We'll take a drink and let's come back. There will be a question and answer session. And I have a little story to share with everyone later. See you in 5 minutes. So this is the question and answer session. I see many questions. So I will choose the questions that's focused on the use of this writing as a practice. So the first question is, in writing, it might strengthen a very personal point of view. So if you set the direction as the practice of Buddha Dharma, would it be better to not focus so much on the personal perspective? How do we achieve a balance? So that was the question. So actually over here, at whatever moment, it is really hard for us to be completely objective. So it is really hard for us to be completely free from any subjectivity. But one thing we can do is through what I have shared earlier on about the different directions or goals. For example, if you want to write about your Buddha Dharma practice, now Buddha Dharma practice is a very broad subject. So of course you can write about it without much of your subjective point of view. Maybe you can be writing about, in the process of your Buddha Dhamma practice, what you observed, that can, or what you saw, that can be subjective. But you can also be talking, so that can be objective, but you can also be writing an observation about how your practice has been. You can simply objectively describe your practice. So how we set the direction, the goal. Our goal might be, I'll try my very best to be objective in observing my Buddha Dhamma practice. That could be a goal. Or sometimes you might set a small goal and say, every day, I want to write down what practice I did today. For instance, today, I managed to maintain my awareness. And under what circumstances did I manage to do so? You can write that down. Or you can say, you can write down, oh, today I managed to be compassionate. So it is a little bit more objective in terms of your description. So in the earlier PPT, you'll be able to see that there are certain directions that you can take. Or you can decide that today, when I see whatever problem, I might want to write down 2 or 3 different perspectives. So practice is really about working on yourself, so you can set your own goals. And that way you can try your best to reduce the subjectivity, to reduce the kind of clinging to your own subjectivity. But at the same time, I feel that you don't necessarily need to remove all kinds of subjectivity, because it can be a very good way of thinking. It can be something that is worthwhile for you to write down and for you to recall and appreciate. So you need to know the goal that you've set for yourself in terms of the writing. And then for some students asked, should we physically write it or should we type it out? So from my own observations, for me, most of it is just typing. I've tried physically writing it, but it's too slow. But also because I've been typing for so long. So sometimes even when I'm writing, I might think, oh, I don't know how to write that word. So typing is easier. So when we physically write, it might make writing harder and it might also slow it down. And that's why I decided that I'd use typing. And some students ask, how much time should we spend on writing? Is there a fixed time? So is it like at any time or is it a specific time of the day? Again, that depends on the individual. At the start, when you begin with the writing practice, you can try it out. So maybe for a period of time, you can fix it at a particular time. And for another time, you can write whenever you can. What you need to do is to try it out yourself and find a method that works best for you. For me, for instance, when my daily life is very stable, that is, there aren't that many changes, then of course having a fixed time is good. But say if you're traveling for work or for pleasure, then you might miss that time, the time that you've set for your writing. So under those circumstances, what you can do is, when I find a pocket of time, for instance, maybe I'm on the mass rapid transit, or at any time when you find a little pocket of time, just write during that time. The main point is we've got to persist and continue with the practice. And over here, I also realized that many of you have learned meditation in the Turga communities. You have taken up the joy of living. And so the technique here is the same as when you're doing meditation. So one technique is to fix a time and do it, or another way is to do it anytime, anywhere. The moment you think of it, you can do it. And as for how much time you spend on writing, it is also up to you. But for me, from my experience, every day I realize, because it's something that I'm very used to. I've been writing for every day. And so I already know what I want to write, and I know what kinds of perspectives, what I want to note down. I've already practiced it over more than 700 days. And I realized that most of the time I can do it within 2 to 3 minutes. I'd be able to write what I want to write within 2 to 3 minutes. And I've consistently maintained the simplicity of my writing and avoiding all details. But at the same time, when I have more time, or when I have the inspiration or the mood to do so, I would write more. Or perhaps for that day, I have more thoughts, more feelings to write, and I may spend 5 to 10 minutes. There are times like this. But this isn't something that happens every day. Most of the time is just like what we talk about. There are things that we eat every day, and once in a while we will have a big feast. So it's the same principle. So there are some students who ask that we maintain awareness all the time when we are walking, or when we're sleeping, we maintain awareness. So there are many questions about these maintaining awareness in our daily practice. So I have a suggestion for those people who ask those questions, and that is you should have received some some advertorial materials on joy of living. So I would suggest that you take up joy of living. And oftentimes, having joined one joy of living class is not enough. You can repeat the lessons, because I see a lot of questions that you have asked. All of them can be answered in the joy of living. And this is the English question. Somebody asked, can we write about our emotions? So when something has happened, can we write about our feelings? And the answer is yes. I've been emphasizing when I talk about writing, it's very broad. So earlier on, we said that one way of writing is really to release the kinds of moods and emotions. Of course, you can write about it. And the benefit of doing so, just like what I mentioned earlier on, is that sometimes you may feel certain discomfort, something happened and you're unhappy. And after writing it down, there is a kind of healing that can occur. You might suddenly feel that, the feeling of being stuck or that anger within, it is released through writing. So it releases your emotions through writing. It can remove the stress within. And because of that, it can also help us more objectively see what actually happened or why something happened. And so as we are writing and releasing these emotions, so sometimes after writing a couple of days later, then you realize that you can become your own teacher. That is, you can help yourself see yourself better. And that can be a benefit of writing. And there's some people who say, I usually practice calligraphy. So can I use calligraphy to do this practice? And that is, we're not merely writing, but working on our awareness. Actually, the practice of calligraphy, it's hard for me to say because I don't do any calligraphy and any of that kind of practice. But I know many people, including my mother, she liked to do calligraphy or to copy things. So if you're copying things and if you use the Joy of Living level 1 meditation technique, you're writing. And you are thinking of the meaning of the content of your writing. For instance, if you're copying out sutras, then you are contemplating on the meaning of the words you're writing, and at the same time you feel yourself writing or you're watching yourself writing, you can use meditation techniques to do the writing. So that is what I've learned. So that is what I've learned from a lot of other people when they shared about their practice in copying the sutra. So in that case, you're not really thinking. It's kind of repetitive, that kind of practice. So you can use that to do either objectless meditation or a meditation with object, knowing that you're writing. It's okay. You can use these as techniques. It'll be more like shamatha meditation. And for some people ask like, oh, you know, your writing is really beautiful. How did you develop that? And I would thank them for this. I'm thanking them for this praise, for these words of kindness. But really, it is through practice. But remember this: we're doing this practice not because we want to be better writers. That's not the point of this. For me, writing is a tool. It is a skillful. It's a skillful method, and this tool is to help me clarify what's happening within and outside of myself. And it helps in deepening my practice. It helps in lifting up my ability to listen and contemplate. And that is the direction, the goal of my writing. And being able to, and I have certain standards for myself. I'm asking myself to write simply, to observe and to write simply, to write in a concise way. So all of these would be, if you have those as goals and practice, you'll be able to attain the level of writing that I've done so. Some people say that, oh, it's when I'm doing calm abiding meditation, it's easy for me to lose it, especially when I try to do it through writing, because I'd be thinking. So that was the question. So I've already shared earlier on that when we're experiencing something, you know, just experience it. You don't need to experience and write at the same time. So when you're experiencing something, you don't need to write anything. This is after the experience, then you can write down some things. But in your mind, if you're experiencing something and then you start thinking, oh, later on, how am I going to write about this? How am I going to write about my feelings? I don't know how to avoid that, because when I think about how I do it, that doesn't really happen so much. Or you can just tell yourself, well, then that's not right about it. So just do it the reverse way. So you don't have to feel so stressed out about having to write about it later and then begin to cling too much on what to write. Some people say there's no sound. Okay. Thank you. So don't take this writing so seriously, and don't take it as like the main thing in your life. Remember, what we're emphasizing here is that writing is merely a tool. Because it's just like every day, there are many things that we've learned. If you're able to write them down, you write them down. If you're meditating and you feel that, oh, writing becomes something that makes you stressed, then you can tell yourself, oh, in my meditative experience, I will not write about it. I will not write about my meditative experiences. Then that's fine. That removes the stress, you know. But other than that, are there other things in your life that you can write down? Of course, there are many. So if you feel that it's worthwhile for you to write down something that you've experienced, something that you've learned, then of course, there are many other things that you can write about, that you can just use a couple of words to describe or to note. Okay, so now I'm skipping all questions regarding meditation since we're focusing on writing. Now, some have also asked that he's tried using writing to observe his thoughts and feelings, and sometimes it feels really tiring and he doesn't feel like writing. So what should he do? For me, from my experience, there are times up to this point after over 2 years, 2 years, almost 3 years. For me, there are times when I do feel tired. Like especially when life has been really difficult. So there'll be 2 to 3 days that I don't write. But is it okay not to write for 2 to 3 days? Of course it's okay. It's not as if this is an exam. It's just, it is a practice for yourself. It is something that you ask of yourself. So if you give yourself 2 to 3 days rest, of course that is okay. So you can so I can let myself rest 2 to 3 days. Then after that, I come back to writing. So for the times when you're not able to write, perhaps it could be you have set it such that you have to observe your thoughts and feelings. And this is a very heavy kind of subject to do so every day. For me, that can be stressful because we don't have so many thoughts and emotions that are worthwhile for us to write about. So maybe you can make it simpler and more relaxed when it comes to your writing practice. For instance, you can try every day, I will just write down something that I've learned. Perhaps, for instance, today I had an argument, and what I learned is that next time, there are certain things that I shouldn't say, certain things that I've got to hold in. So it isn't really something big. It's just like a line. You can write about it. So the main point here is make the practice simple. Don't make it so stressful for yourself. Because really what we want to do is how to make this practice continue in the long term. So every day there is a time that you spend on it, then you'll be able to see your progress. And through that, you would be able to experience your learning. So everything requires time. It's the same with meditation. So if you just do it for 1 or 2 days, you won't be able to see much of a result. So after some time of practice, then you'll realize, oh, is this thing really beneficial for me? Then you'll be able to see it for yourself. And somebody asked, how can we join Joy of Living workshops? I will ask the volunteers to put in the chat as to how to sign up for Joy of Living. And somebody asked me about the documentary that I watched. I think it's something about how language can affect our cognition. It's a female professor. Or perhaps I'll share it with a Turkic volunteer and we'll share it with the rest of you. Oh, some asked about awareness and meditation. What's the difference? This is all of these answers. You can just go for a Joy of Living workshop. Then some ask, which is better? Should I write on the phone or the computer? Of course, computer is easier because when you type it out, it's more comfortable. It's easier because of my translation and interpretation duties. I use the computer every day. Like I have got to sit in front of the computer for quite a while every day. So it's easy for me to spend 1 to 2 minutes to type it out. And there was a period of time when I write at night. So then I will forget and then I'll write about it the next morning. And then, or sometimes like right after I turn on the computer, before I start my task, then I will write it. I'll write what happened like today. So sometimes I would try to write it because I feel like I really want to note it down. I will write it there and then. So what you can see is that writing, oh, there it is, the TED talk that I shared earlier on. It's about how language shapes the way we think. It's in the Zoom chat right now. So the thing is that it is really flexible, this writing practice. It just depends on your situation at that time. So it's really flexible. And you can use different ways, different perspectives. So I think time is almost up. I'd like to share with you a little story. So it is the use of writing. I have a Lama friend. He's always having some kind of a cold. He's always suffering from cold. And every time I talk to him, then he'd have a runny nose. And he'd be showing signs of having a cold. So he'd take some medication because of his cold, because of his runny nose, blocked nose. One day, I had an inspiration. Perhaps it's because I read something somewhere that some signs of cold is not really cold. It could be simply allergies. So I told this Lama friend of mine, you've been having these colds like so much. You're so young. He's so young, and it's not like he's physically weak. Why would he always be suffering from colds? It's not normal. So I told him, why don't you check and see? Perhaps it's not cold. Perhaps it's really an allergy. So he thought about it and said, but he doesn't know what he's allergic to. Every day he's just like this. So I told him, how about you write? You set it for like a week or two. You put a record, observe. And what do you write about? You write down in this functional type of writing. So the direction is to record what you eat each day or any situation that you come across. So he started recording what he ate in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night. So he set up this record. And a week later or more later, I asked him to go back and look at your records and see what you can find out from it. And because of these records, he realized that, on the day when you weren't feeling well, write down what you have eaten, and also take note of what you've eaten the day before. So every day he wrote it down. And what he realized is that the signs of a cold comes from right after he has eaten something cold. So after he's eaten something cold, the next day he'll have a runny nose or a blocked nose. And he realized that just after eating some specific kinds of food, then he'll have certain symptoms of a cold. So he realized that perhaps it could be because of allergies. And so he realized that, okay, I'm going to avoid eating this and that. So I'm going to get rid of all of those things in my diet. And then he found out that when he got rid of all of those that he suspects might cause his symptoms, he realized that, okay, yeah, he realized that this is it. This is the reason why he was showing all of those symptoms. So I found out that, when you use writing as a practice, it can be some kind of a record to help you see certain things or certain causes in your physical body. So this Lama found out that, it's because of allergies, and therefore he doesn't need to take any cold medication. He understood his body better, and he understood what is more suitable, what kind of diet is more suitable for his body, and therefore he's able to do something good for himself. So I found out that writing, you can see that you can use it in many different aspects. It has many different uses. So of course you can say that as long as we maintain our awareness, that's good, but our brain cannot remember so many things. And especially every day, we tend to forget, and that's the way we are nowadays. Some of you have written, can we go back and look for some problems? Yes, writing can help us reflect and think of and find out things. Some asked, can we write about our emotions that happen during a particular situation? And the answer is, of course. I did it before. So I do it I'll describe very simply and objectively what happened. So for instance, because of this person and I had some kind of a disagreement. And then this person said this thing, which made me feel discomfort. So you can write it down in a very simple way, describe it in a simple way. Why do I keep saying try to make it simple and concise? Like use simple and concise language? Because sometimes when we're writing about our emotions and moods, then we become really detailed. Oh, he said this, I said this, and I felt this way. And then like the entire dialogue. And when you use too many details, then you would get lost in the details. So my suggestion is to simplify it. And this simplification would show that you have thought it through. And something that you've thought through, organized better, is very useful. Because as you are thinking it through and organizing it, that in itself is kind of like digesting what's happening. So when you see how you've described your emotions at that point, when it's been described simply, it can enable you to look at your experience more objectively. I think this is a method. Another use is oftentimes we would ask questions. I don't know if you realize that like during class, we would ask questions. If it is like, of course, in class, when we ask questions, it allows for interaction. But as we're asking the question, when we are speaking it, when we're asking the question out loud, it is hard to organize it. Then you would describe a lot of things. And then in the end, you don't even know what question it is. So from there, you can see that when we speak orally versus physically writing something, there is a difference. If you write your questions down, you will realize that you don't need to write for 5 pages because you'll start to organize your thoughts. You'll try to make it more condensed, more concise. You'll try to clarify what exactly is the question. You clarify your thinking. You make an effort to think about what you want to say. So when you're writing down your question, it becomes clearer. So all of those are just some responses to questions. Some people say that about 90% of my thoughts are about money. If I'm rich, then I will not have any stress when it comes to meditation. I don't quite understand this question. So when you have stress about meditation, it does not necessarily need to be connected to money. And sometimes when you have enough money, does it necessarily mean that you have fewer thoughts? I feel it's not necessarily so. At least from my experience, I realize that. Maybe you have the experience, but for me, from my experience, those who are very rich, those who are very wealthy, they actually have lots of thoughts. There are many like that. Now, if I think about it, are most of my thoughts related to money? I don't know. I'll have to observe them. But from my experience, it's not like this. Perhaps you can ask some of your other friends and see if it is so. I think it's almost time. It's about 5 more minutes. I think I've answered most of the questions here. Oh, there's one more. Can we reread what we have written? Of course you can reread what you have written. But I feel that we won't do it often because time is limited. Just writing requires time, even if it's 1 to 2 minutes. Sometimes you don't even want to spend the 1-2 minutes, or sometimes you might not be able to do it. From my experience and from the experience of my friends, to reread or recall what you've done, it doesn't happen too often. Once in a while, suddenly, you think of it. Oh, just like for me, previously, I wanted to read about what I have written during my retreat. I just want to go and take a look at the content I've written. Then I've also shared with everyone earlier that if you have used a kind of system like when you write and there's a particular system that you have some kind of a heading, maybe the content that you've written today is related to daily life or related to meditation or impermanence or compassion. So if you have some kind of a heading, even if it's one heading, then perhaps you were thinking of impermanence on one day, or perhaps because of teaching or sharing, there is a particular subject, then you can go back and search for things to do with impermanence. Then all the content that has any link to impermanence would be there. Then I can see that, oh, I have such an experience with impermanence. I have this kind of inspiration, understanding, experience with impermanence. Then you can see your past experience with impermanence. So using a computer app to do the writing, when it comes to searching, it becomes a lot more convenient. So it really depends on our goal. You've got to be very clear about your goal. It shouldn't merely be for writing or for releasing stress. It's not all that. It is through this practice of writing, through this tools, through this technique, it helps us to be clear and see and be aware of our life and our practice, be it, in the relative world, like in our daily lives, So I hope you can make good use of this tool. Just give it a shot. Try it out. I'm very sure it'll be very beneficial. And I'm very happy that Terga Taiwan gave me the opportunity this time to be able to share with you. Thank you all.
非常感谢妙容法师带来这么珍贵精妙的分享，也谢谢大家今晚的参与。Thank you very much, Tsunma Miaorong, to bring us such a precious and wonderful sharing. And thank you all for joining us tonight. 祝福大家能将今天所学到的运用在日常生活中，开展与深化我们的觉知。May all of us can apply what we have learned tonight in our daily life to develop and deepen our awareness. 那么今晚的活动就到这里圆满，我们下一次见。Our event for tonight is coming to a close. See you next time. Goodbye.